Hi, I've been working on this little project for a few weeks, and I decided to share it with the world. This is my first devlog, and I'm very excited to see what everybody thinks. Anyway, recently I've been learning about procedural generation. I followed Sebastian League's tutorial series on procedural planets, and I got some pretty good results. However, I really wanted to do something that was on my own. I decided a good place to start would be by making a labyrinth. I spent about a week trying to get the system working, and eventually got something I thought was decent. This took a while, and the code is pretty inefficient after a certain number of rooms are added, but with a small number of rooms, it works pretty great. However, I had a problem. All the cubes were quite laggy for my laptop. To fix this, I decided on a chunk system. That took another few days of coding and suffering, but it too eventually worked. With the chunk system, at any given time there would be only about 2,000 vertices, and that had really good performance. I then had to generate the labyrinth using objects, and I had finally gotten some interesting results. It was so easy to get lost in it, and it was actually quite intense at some points, even though there was literally no danger. I was reminded of some of the games I used to play when I was younger, and I wanted to capture that feeling. I added dense fog, a light, and post-processing to create an eerie, kinda lonely feeling. I want this game to be a horror game, but one that doesn't rely on the classic horror tropes. I want it to be lonely, claustrophobic, and eerie. And I find that that's kind of a thing that's sometimes rare in video games, at least ones that I've played. Also, the idea of a procedural horror game intrigued me, and because I couldn't really think of games that use that idea just right off the top of my head, I figured it'd be a worthwhile pursuit rather than just a small project. The next thing I wanted to do was have a variety of creatures in the game. Some of them would be like aggressive, some would be passive, while others would, have different effects and, all that type of stuff. Of course, the first problem I encountered was the fact that the enemies had to move around and be able to follow the player, or whatever path I decided to give it. I couldn't use the Unity's built-in nav mesh because the maps were procedurally generated, and I felt like it would be more work than it would be worth to use somebody else's pathfinding code. So I made my own A-star implementation. If you don't know what A-star is, here's a great overview video. It'll be in the description. But this is the video I referenced in order to code my own. After about 2 days, I got the pathfinding working. It was pretty efficient, probably not perfect, but not bad. I got the pathfinding out of the way, and so now I could actually have real creatures in the game. The first creature I added was a spider. The spider was just an asset I downloaded from Unity Asset Store, and I felt like it worked really well with the setting of the game. Currently, it doesn't actually do anything other than walk around randomly, but I plan on making it stun the player when the player gets too close. The only difficult thing about that was getting it to work with my pathfinding, but really, because of the way I designed the pathfinding, it was pretty simple. I did end up getting a bit sidetracked for a moment, because I wanted to add shadows to the game. I felt like there wasn't enough depth, and it was hard to see where the spider actually was in relation to the walls. The problem was that the light was directly in line with the camera, so you couldn't actually see the shadows that were being cast. My solution to this was to simply move the light at an angle so you could actually see the shadows. I had previously planned for the player to be holding a flashlight anyway, so this wasn't actually a problem. The real sidetrack happened when I wanted to make arms for the player to hold the flashlight. I am by no means a 3D modeler, if you can tell by this monstrosity of a picture, and so I spent hours trying to model and rig a pair of arms using a tutorial. I had so many problems with the rigging part and Blender's automatic weights, and it took such a long time to do them manually. Eventually, though, I did get them working, but I still haven't implemented them into the game. I did get a bit of modeling and animation skills, so I worked on the next creature. It's called the Clara. All the creature names are based on a word that describes the creature and then translated into Latin. I got this modeled, rigged, and textured, and then got it into Unity. It has a special feature so that it can only be seen when your flashlight is turned off, but otherwise it does nothing. I had to take some time off for my calculus test, but I worked a bit on the wall creature. The name is still to be determined. It looks dark from the outside, but when you go inside of it, it freezes and turns itself into a wall, intentionally confusing the player. I wanted to make the effects look cooler, so I was once again distracted by writing some post-processing shaders. I made a monochrome one, a crappy blood shader, and the weirdest of them all, a shader that probably looks like what drugs feel like. I should really move on from all these shaders though, because I'm not really accomplishing much. I need to move on to the main story of the game and make more creatures. My plan is to get a minimum viable product up and running within about a month or so, that way I can see if people would actually want to play the game or not. If you did end up watching this entire video, thank you so much. I'd love to hear what you think about the project so far, and any advice that you do have would be really appreciated. Hopefully I can make some more of these devlogs to track the progress I make, but for now, that's all I've done on this project so far. Bye.